Right.
So I'll let you.
That's look.
That works out well. Okay, very cool.
And then it'll move to whoever's talking usually.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it's me, then it doesn't matter.
Right there on the end, Paula,
Okay.
because I can read it.
So I'm here.
And Michael and Eric, Stephanie, thank you.
Sounds like romper room.
Yes, it does, and I can see,
Hi.
and I can see Miss Judy, yes.
I was on romper room.
Were you?
Wow.
Kevin, can I ask you a question?
Oh my gosh, you're 12.
Are our swimmers here? Paula, did you see any of our swimmers out in the lobby?
Yep.
Oh, cool, okay.
So my swimmers are here with a very close
Probably.
John, do you have anyone on Zoom who's not a person on the picture?
Because it wasn't
Okay. We're just gonna give people a minute to get sorted here in this room. If everyone online can just give us a few minutes. I don't think so. We're not
Well, we'll have that back to you. Give you
Otherwise, that's,
Okay.
thank you, John.
Hi, Heather. Thanks.
Which I think you're providing as a video on something.
It's remarkably well.
So I look at you, that's what I wanted to know.
Just
That's why I said negative. So impressed.
Leave them up front, but we know we'll excuse them, so.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Board of School Directors of Lewisburg Area School District. Let's rise to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a few announcements this evening. The board met in executive session for approximately 45 minutes before the meeting this evening to have a tour of the CSIU who are hosting us tonight, as well as talk through some legal and personnel matters. All of us are in attendance, and Ms. Hanos is joining us via Zoom. At this time, we'd like to do our student athlete recognition. So, Chris, would like to. It's a slightly different setup. I think if you talk, it'll
Okay.
put you on. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so good evening. It's my pleasure this evening to bring forth and honor some of our winter sports athletes who achieved state level of postseason competition. Tonight, and they're all seated in the back right now, so we're probably gonna ask you to stand up and come a little bit forward. The state is members of the Lewisburg swim team who qualified for the PIAA Class AA competition in March that was held at Bucknell University. Tonight, with us tonight is Kimberly Shannon, so Kim, if you want to stand up. Emma Gerlinski, Emma Hopkinson, Jillian Donner, and the other student athlete would have been Mason Ordonez, but he is ill right now, so he cannot be here tonight. Along with them is Coach Madison Lambert and the head coach Mason Waterman. In that competition, in two-day competition on that weekend in March, two members of the team brought home 3 medals. In that, Kimberly Shannon won gold medals this year in the 200 medley and once again in the 500 freestyle. So that is all 4 years that you won the 500 free, right, Kimberly? Okay, so that's quite an accomplishment right there. And then also Mason, who, as I said, could not be here. He earned the 5th place medal in the 200 freestyle. So those were our medalists. I'm going to turn it over to the coaches, Coach Werderman and Coach Lambert, to give a little bit of recap, and then we would ask for some of you to speak tonight also. So, coaches?
Okay. Just first off, I want to thank you all for having us tonight. It's truly an honor. And just to recap the meet a little bit, all of our swimmers actually did place in consolation finals at the very least. In the 200 individual medley, we had the relay of Julie Donner, Kimmy Shannon, Emma Hopkinson, and Emma Grolinski. And that was the same for the 2 free relay. They both scored in the consolation final. And then for Emma Grolinski for placing the 2 free in the consolation final, And then Mason Ordonez also qualified in the 100 free for the consolation final.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having us here. These swimmers work really hard all season long, not just at states. They set goals at the beginning of the season. They work really hard not only on the Lewisburg swim team here, but also on their club teams. And it was really awesome to see them reach those goals, not only on states, but throughout the whole season. They did an awesome.
So, as I said, thank you for having me. I believe this is my second school board meeting I've been in attendance. It's a joy, I really like it. The season was definitely special. Being able to finish out my high school career with the Dragons like this was really exciting. I want to thank all of you for making it possible. I know high school sports is definitely a big deal, especially to the athletes. It's just kind of a way I get to express myself in a different way outside of the schoolwork. So I've enjoyed every year I've swam with the Dragons, and I hope that what I've been able to do on the high school team just puts a little stepping stone for the next kids to follow who are excited to swim. So.
As she said, and all of them said, thank you for having me. Being able to swim for Lewisburg for the past 4 years has been very wonderful. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really do think that our team has been one of the best teams I've been on ever. We always bring the energy, and especially at states with all of us, including Mason, who's not here. We really brought the energy, and it was a really fun experience for all of us, and I really enjoyed the past 4 years. And
Great.
congratulations, you guys.
Will be swimming at Pitt, and Emma at Lewisburg, and Mason at South. Okay, I'm like, yep. So I think that speaks a lot to the, all 3 of them are also going to be college athletes and swimming.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thanks, coaches.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. We do extend the offer for you to leave if you would like to, because our board meetings tend to be long. But we're very, very happy to have you. Thank you. Another round of applause. All right, our next item on the agenda is citizens' comments to the board on agenda items. We have a couple of folks who registered before the meeting, so our policy allows for 5 minutes. And then Ms. Green, you'll have the typical 3 minutes. Just to let everyone know, per our policy, we don't typically respond to comments made to the board, but at a future meeting, we may be able to, but we don't sort of respond on the fly. So our first person is Molly Clay.
Can Shana go first?
Okay, so first, yeah, Shana can go first.
Where should I go? I'm right up here in the middle where the space is.
Yeah, as though the thing can see you.
First, we compiled some questions for the board for this presentation, so I'd like to pass them around. So hello everyone, my name is Shayna Sapatina. I'm here tonight to follow up on the email I sent to the board expressing my concerns about the district's special education program and to share my perspective as a parent of a child in this program. I urge the board to consider postponing its vote on the IU contract until current and future district needs are better understood. There are numerous unanswered questions that must be addressed before proceeding. Let it be known that I am not unhappy with the current services provided by the IU. However, this proposed vote raises concerns about consistency within our special education framework and veers away from the establishment of a comprehensive and sustainable program. Single-year contracted IU classrooms introduce instability for students, families, and staff in special education. To ensure stability, we must establish a well-defined program encompassing consistent training, resources, and transition planning. This contract's annual renewal potential jeopardizes these crucial elements. Such uncertainty undermines the routine and consistency vital for our children's success. A fully outlined plan for our children would also offer reassurance to parents like myself. Furthermore, a comprehensive special education program would not require students to leave the district in order to access their core curriculum. When my child started kindergarten, I expected him to be able to flow seamlessly through a support program within the district. However, that has not been our experience. I have had to ask for supports, aides, and even classrooms along the way. Despite my son's unique diagnosis, which allows him to jump between autism and life skills, I have had to request support rooms at each building transition. This should not be the case. If my son had to remain exclusively in autism support, he would have to go to Mifflinburg next year, which would be an enormous transition for him. And then, if the proposed plan were to continue, he would go to Work Foundations, which means that his time at the district would essentially end in 5th grade, which is this year. How does the model truly represent the values of an inclusive community when it reduces contact between special ed and regular ed within the district? My aim is for the district to craft its own continuum of services and supports. The combination of IU and district-led classrooms creates confusion for parents and jeopardizes consistent support year to year. When a student is placed in an IU classroom, it remains unclear who addresses concerns, the district or the IU. Likewise, the responsibility for purchasing equipment and curricula lacks clarity. If staff needs to be trained to use a specific curriculum, who does the training? And what happens if the following year, if receiving staff are unfamiliar with that curriculum? My son uses the competent learner model, which IU staff are generally trained on. However, now that he is transitioning back to a district-led classroom, district staff will need to be trained. I've already been questioned whether my son needs to continue this model because the district staff is not trained in this curriculum. This example highlights that the district and the IU are not simply interchangeable. The absence of transition planning in the contract exacerbates inconsistency in special education because insufficient time is allocated for proper planning and coordination. A July 1st contractual start does not allow for meeting and pairing with the teacher, support staff, related service providers, nor the opportunity to visit the classroom in the previous school year. Also, a July 1st start allows very little time to read IEPs, conduct handoff, train in specific curricula, and purchase necessary equipment to meet the needs of the students. When my son transitioned to Lintown, the IU teacher was assigned to the classroom just weeks before the start of the school year. The transient nature of IU-led classrooms further complicates transition planning and raises questions about contract renewals based on students' needs versus budgetary constraints. What will determine whether a contract gets renewed for another year? While the Fair Share Plan may alleviate some financial burdens, it risks compromising the quality of education by increasing classroom sizes and reducing personal space. The district's reliance on the IU prompts speculation about its long-term vision for special education. In my opinion, low student numbers present an opportunity for staff development and the establishment of a robust district-led program. Will partnering with the IU deflect district attention away from developing its own independent special ed program? Once more, I urge the board to postpone the vote to sign the IU contract. Ultimately, the board's decision should prioritize the needs of our students and address the broader issues within our special education program. Our community seeks a commitment to developing a sustainable program that offers stability, support, and a consistent continuum of services. Let us invest in the long-term success of our children by building an independent program that reflects our values and aspirations. Thank you.
I was told I could have a little more than 5 minutes. Mine is a little long. I will try to go quickly. My name is Molly Clay. My son is currently in 5th grade in an out-of-district placement. I'd like to share with the board some key moments from his experience and then provide some concerns about the IU contract under consideration and some broader recommendations for the special ed program generally that extend from my son's experience. 2 significant failures marked my son's progress within special ed. The first was a failure to accurately identify my son's needs. This occurred when my son was in 2nd grade and the district neglected to conduct any assessment as part of his reevaluation. Per state requirements, reevaluation is conducted every 2 to 3 years as a way of identifying a student's changing needs. Even though my son had made no progress on the self-regulation goal that he had had since kindergarten, and despite the fact that he was showing increasing discontent at school, especially around math, the district concluded his IEP was working for him. They failed to conduct any kind of assessment and instead pushed him into 3rd grade with no modification to his IEP. Neglecting assessment as part of my son's reevaluation in 2nd grade led to major behavioral concerns, particularly around math in 3rd grade. It took us the entirety of 3rd grade to work through getting an independent education evaluation that ultimately determined my son had a specific learning disability in math, a developmental coordination disorder, dysgraphia, and a number of other specific deficits that were impacting how he learned. An independent speech evaluation also later diagnosed an auditory processing disorder. While all of this was being identified, my son's behaviors at school became increasingly severe, and he developed high anxiety related to school. The second failure occurred during the transition from 3rd to 4th grade when my son moved into an IU-led room that discontinued supports that were known to be necessary for him. By 4th grade, with the information from the independent evaluations, new goals were written in my son's IEP, and appropriately aligned curriculums in math, language arts, and social skills were implemented. However, the gains that we had hoped to see from the curriculum changes were negated by other changes that were introduced into the 4th grade classroom. At Kelly Elementary, my son learned in the roomy autism support classroom with a 1-to-1 aide and 4 to 5 peers. At Lintown, the classroom was significantly smaller and combined autism support with life skills. The room had 8 students, and my son was not provided a 1-to-1 aide. With 8 students in a smaller space and no aide, learning became more difficult for my son despite his targeted curriculum. The IU did eventually provide an aide, but by the time the aide was introduced, my son was already displaying significant behaviors which made bonding and pairing impossible. Unfortunately, all of the negative coping strategies that my son learned in 3rd grade while we were working to get his curriculum nailed down persisted right into 4th. The behaviors became so severe that ultimately an out-of-district placement was determined to be the best option, since the district was apparently unable to educate him. When I think back on the last 2 to 3 years, I can't shake the feeling that it didn't have to be this way. Had the district identified my son's needs when they were supposed to, how might it all have played out differently? If the district had continued aid support to 4th grade and had an established AS room at Lintown that was similar to the one at Kelly, how might it have all been different? As a child on the autism spectrum, my son has significant social skill deficits, and his experiences in school only exacerbated these deficits. His meltdowns prevented him from regular participation in everyday school activities and from developing social bonds with peers. Instead, peers had to see him at his worst nearly every day, and no one wanted to be friends with him. Even the adults he encountered treated him like a behavior problem instead of seeing him as an individual in distress. He lost about 2 years of social, emotional, and academic progress. The district must keep up with the needs of its students. The risks of not doing so are high. In my son's case, not only was his own progress stalled, he also disrupted those around him and threatened their safety. He has also cost the district money. The district has had to pay for 2 independent evaluations, out-of-district tuition, and compensatory education for him. I can't say it enough. It didn't need to be this way. A fully developed continuum of education would guarantee consistency in classroom space, curricula, staff, and services from year to year. The IU contract currently under consideration lacks the clarity and specificity that would provide a true continuum of education for students. It does not spell out who will provide services such as speech, OT, and social work when a student is in an IU-led classroom. It does not spell out how students will transition to IU classrooms and back to the district. It does not address who is responsible for equipment, curricula, or training, or how these things are supposed to move between the IU and the district. The contract does not specify who will conduct reevaluations and decide if an IEP is working or not. The contract also does not guarantee classroom assistance or aid support. Given that the contract is currently only for 1 year, the district needs to make it very specific to the needs of the students that it is supposed to serve. Vague or passive language is not acceptable. I encourage the board to negotiate with the IU so that more clarity is written into the contract. I would also remind the board that if the IU is unable to successfully implement an IEP, liability still falls with the district. A final concern about the IU contract has to do with unpredictability. It is currently impossible for parents to even guess when their child might get switched into an IU room. What are the tipping points that push the district towards partnership? Parents are often told something along the lines of, the district adapts to evolving needs as they arise. But this does not provide helpful information. Cobbling together support rooms 1 year at a time does not translate into a coherent program that a parent or child can easily navigate. 1 school year doesn't happen in isolation from the next. They are linked, and the district needs to be able to ensure that year-to-year progress is possible for these kids. All of the parts of special education matter. The physical space, the equipment, the teachers and aides, the training, the IEP, the social workers, the OTs, the speech therapists, the peer groups, they all matter. We need all the parts to come together, and if we don't get and maintain all of it, then we get nowhere. I recognize that the district can't address everything all at once. So in addition to my concerns about the IU contract, I'll offer a few thoughts on where the district might focus its energies. 1, either by working with the IU or with its own school psychologist, the district needs to be able to perform adequate evaluative testing and assessment to ensure that it is accurately identifying the needs of its special ed students. 2, the district should either narrow the advertised BCBA position to focus on a range of grades or break it out into multiple positions. Increased competition from other employers who offer more manageable caseloads like Mission Autism or New Story make a sprawling district-wide position unlikely to be filled. 3, increase pay for aides and work towards sustaining a larger pool of aides. Aid support needs to be consistent for special ed students from year to year. 4, designate classroom space for special ed in each building in the district. Ideally, special ed classrooms in each building would have similar layouts, features, and sizes to help support transitions between buildings. Has there been any discussion of putting any of the $3 million surplus from last year towards increasing or improving physical space for special ed? Support strong district leadership. Our special ed students have needs that are legally protected. Recently, legal settlements would indicate that the district is not rising to meet the needs of its students. We need strong leadership that will advocate for our kids and work towards a research-based, long-lasting, high-quality program. Special ed at LASD is currently understaffed, undersupported, and frankly, poorly understood. While the district sees low student numbers in special ed classrooms as a problem, specialists see this as desirable. The neuropsych who conducted my son's independent evaluation recommended that he learn in a group of 2 to 3 peers. There must be a way to bring these perspectives more into alignment. I would encourage the administration and the board to visit special ed rooms and see them in action in order to better understand the needs. Our program must not be relying on parents to do the work of the district. The board and administration must not be satisfied with special ed offerings that just happen to sort of work out for some kids and fail others. That is not acceptable. We need to be working towards a coherent, comprehensive, research-based, long-lasting special ed program. I request that the board work to revise the IU contract with the specific needs of the students who will be served by it in mind. I also request that the board put special ed on the agenda for the April 25th working group meeting so that it can dialogue with the special ed community and better understand their concerns. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Green.
I guess first, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity, and I will tell you it's a little intimidating, frankly, this is my first board meeting to come to. And I guess I'll just preface this with that I'm a taxpayer and a wife of a tax collector. Okay, so I know that I come here because I'm concerned, from a personal perspective, I had bias, of course, but I will share with you that there are two sides to a story, and as you kind of work through whatever you're doing with our local tax collectors that are asking for additional funding, I would like you to consider that it's one thing to have two sets of attorneys talking and chatting amongst themselves on what those outcomes may or may not be. I'm so proud of my husband because, you know, he's decided he's all in, similar to you. He's an elected servant to the public, and he works till 1 or 2 in the morning during the early periods to make sure that all that funding and all that math and all those dollars get to where they need to go. And has ramped up trying to contact constituents that the mail hasn't quite worked or their mailing address is wrong. And I share this with you because that's the backside of that story. And I just encourage you to think about the lens. It's not all about the dollars. It's really about how do we treat people, how do we treat our taxpayers, the people that are paying at the end of the day. And I realize there's budget concerns. Having done lots of budgets in my lifetime, I get it. But what I do know is when you take a job, and I'm sure you've all been there, or you've taken one, and you thought you knew what it was, and you're brand new, and you're learning up and realizing all these issues, and there's things need to change. And then you take action the next year and say, okay, I'm gonna change these things because it doesn't make sense, it's not working. And then your numbers get smaller because you're not calling as many people anymore because the system works. And the relationship that he has with your manager there at the school district, you know, that relationship is full. I can tell from I'm hearing it's, you know, my end of it, that that's good. They have a great relationship, things work through. So I just wanted to share with you, if you have the opportunity, and if you haven't actually had an opportunity to stop by the office, he's got hours posted, and talk to other folks that pay their taxes and how he interacts with those folks. Because I would tell you 99.9% of the time, they are really happy with him. And he hears it all the time, and he takes his dog, and Briggs is probably a plus to that because it gives a little bit more personal feel to the process. And anyway, that's why I'm here today. He was not really happy about me coming. I'm just gonna put that out there, but I just felt so inclined, so thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to, the board is always appreciative of everyone who comes to speak from the public because we don't often hear from individuals at board meetings. So we take every comment into consideration. You'll see each of us taking good notes. We also rely a lot on Paula to refresh us. She's over there always taking notes and keeping track. So, and thank you for the list of questions. This is definitely something that the board will consider. The next item on our agenda is a presentation from the CSIU, and Dr. Krelja, thank you. You wouldn't mind sort of taking the floor?
My pleasure. So my name is John Krelja. I'm the Executive Director of the CSIU, and it's a privilege to serve in this role. And we're just going to take a brief minute to tell you a little about the organization, who we are and where we came from, and then we're going to introduce a couple people who are going to present a little bit more on special education that the parents have shared some information about. We can share some things with what the CSIU does. So our organization was founded over 50 years ago, And it was founded specifically to deliver special education services. And we've been doing so across that time and have developed some expertise in that area. Our folks that you're going to hear from are directly connected to the state in terms of what's going on in best practices, in terms of staffing and new policies and procedures. We have supervisors that have been recruited, let's say, from other districts and other locations who have a great deal of expertise in the area. We develop a great deal of professional development for our local educators. We're actually tapped on a regular basis to actually go in and provide director services for districts when they can't find someone. And it's been a privilege of ours to be able to help anywhere we can. But that's a different part of the subject, but that's how we got into this world as a service center. But a service center in the state of Pennsylvania, an intermediate unit, is the bridge between the school districts and the state. And our organization is very different. That 50 years ago, we made a decision that we weren't going to take a subsidy from the local school districts, while every other intermediate unit in the state did. So while there's a tax that's levied on some IUs for school districts, we don't have that. So our funding that you see and all the things that are created are through things we build, create, make, and sell. And that's how we make things work. We're proud of what we do and how we do it. We live into 4 key values in everything that we do: service to others, equity in action, passion for excellence, and innovation for growth. And we try and make sure that everything we do revolves around those things. So another thing tied to special education is a big focus of our work of late is on the teacher pipeline. We're trying to grow and develop more teachers because we absolutely need them. We need our young people to think that being a teacher is a cool thing, that to be able to become an educator is a lifelong passion, profession that will allow you to make a contribution that will last into the generations ahead. So I don't know if any of you would have seen a Super Bowl commercial we put out. Anyone see that by any chance? Can we show that really quickly? It's only 30 seconds, and it would take a lot of your time. Go ahead. Share screen. While we're getting that set, oh, there it is. Because you're the...
Oh, okay, so I'll stop share. All right, and then I will share and we'll give it a shot here.
While we're getting that ready, we don't want to delay too long. It's not. One of the things we did is we got awarded a grant, the only one for the state of Pennsylvania, to develop a teacher apprenticeship model to grow and develop teachers in our region. Dr. Alan Hack, who's our assistant executive director, is working to develop a pipeline. So if you have a child that wants to become an educator, they can do so without any college debt. If you're an aide that's in our classrooms right now and you'd like to become a teacher, you can become a teacher without having to pay for anything to do so. If you're a person who has a bachelor's degree and you decide you want to go back to become a teacher, we can help you do that at no cost. Because we're trying to grow and develop teachers in our region, and not just for the IU programs, for everyone in our region. The spot that we're trying to play for you, we paid for a contract with WBRE that all of our local districts can get a spot for their local school district to promote education. Where you run has had one so far. We have the Super Bowl ad. Is there any others that you've done so far, Bernadette?
Working on about 3 other districts right now.
So if Lewisburg ever wanted to get in on that, we're happy to pay for that to happen so you can promote Lewisburg around the region. Another thing we've done most recently is develop a web portal where anyone in the region can go and click on a button to show Lewisburg's openings, Milton's openings, Warrior Run's openings, right to your webpage, so that anyone around the region is searching, it's a place they can go to get that information. I'm not, do we there?
We're ready whenever, yeah.
This is the 30-second clip right now.
A teacher changes the world, one student at a time.
And my favorite thing is at the very end, is a young child saying, I want to be a teacher too. I might not get the chance to hear that.
I want to be a teacher when I grow up.
It's
Visit teachpa.csiu.org.
The biggest thing I would want to communicate to you is that we're here to help. We're a service center, and our job is trying to help make your kids successful in any way that we possibly can. And what I'm going to do is introduce to you a couple people that are going to talk to you specifically about special education, to give you some insight about what it is that we're able to do. Are we perfect? I would never try to say that we're perfect at everything we do. But we have a level of expertise that no district can match in terms of the services we provide. And we have continuity with our leadership in special education that is beyond compare. And we are here to bring those services to you to try and help your students be successful any way we can. So the two people I'm going to introduce is Terry Locke. I was going to say doctor, but not yet, but she's working on it. And Rayanna Bueller. Terry Locke is our Director of Special Education, and Rayanna Bueller is one of our program supervisors. And just recently I got to visit all 7 of Rayanna's classrooms and was nothing but impressed by the work they do, not only the Warrior Run School District, but also Mifflinburg and Chippewa. So we're going to introduce them, and they'll be able to talk a little bit about the services we have the ability to provide in special education. Please.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm very proud to be here. Welcome to the CSIU. And so, John, if you want to go ahead and bring up the PowerPoint that I have here. Okay, you can go
Terry,
ahead.
I'm glad it worked for you.
You can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So as Dr. Kralja had talked about, I'm going to give just a little overview on some of the different things that we do here in special education. We currently have 2 center-based programs, our Work Foundations program, which is a secondary life skills program that focuses on employment and independent living. We also have a 5-star secondary complex right now down in Sunbury, where we teach students for emotional and behavioral self-regulation skills. Next year, we will have an elementary center that will also provide K-5 support in these 2 areas as well. I failed to mention, we are in 17 different school districts providing services every single day, whether it's to administration, to staff, whether we have classrooms there, or working with district special ed supervisors to help serve their needs of their students. In addition, we currently have 10 classroom-based programs, and one of my supervisors here today, Rihanna, is here. So in addition to autistic support, we have multiple disability support, deaf, hard of hearing support, life skills support, and autistic support. So those 4 disciplines that we have. We provide itinerant services, so that could look like a speech therapist, a social worker. It could be a vision therapist, a deaf, hard of hearing teacher, or a teacher for orientation and mobility that comes into the school districts to provide services either on an individual basis or on a group basis. And we also do a lot of professional development. So Dr. Kralja talked a lot about that. And that's not only to our school districts, but that's with families, that's with our own students, and our very own staff from our training and consultative staff that we have on board. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our culture. If you've walked in one of our classrooms, you've just really walked in one of our classrooms. It is definitely individualized. And we program for the needs of the student, the classroom, and the district, all on an individual basis. You will find that it's inclusive in nature, so our goal is to get our kiddos out in the least restrictive setting. So even though we might be providing a full-time classroom, we work with the district regular ed staff. Most of our kiddos are assigned to a homeroom teacher, and the goal is always to get those kids out into the regular ed setting as much as we can and be a part of their homeroom. We also foster a partnership between the district building level as well as our IU classrooms. Here in our picture, you'll see an annual Thanksgiving dinner that we put on for district staff, our therapists, our parents, and supports in and around the school that we put on annually in one of our classrooms. In addition, that partnership even though we are a service provider, we do blend that role from the parents and the district all very well seamlessly together. Next slide, John. So I talked about those individual unique differences that we have. I'm going to highlight a little bit about our curriculum. So our curriculum is definitely different in each class that we are in each building that we're in. You can walk into district classrooms that we run, and we are providing the same curriculum in English language arts and math as what is being provided across the hall, depending on the student's needs. We also have a couple modified curriculums that would match up with the alternative assessment and the alternative standards. In a lot of our classrooms, we could have 3 or 4 different curriculums per subject area occurring because it meets the individual needs of those students. Our supports and services, we believe in a team approach, and our speech therapists are engaged in our classrooms, and that is one of the therapists that are a part of our classroom services. We believe in the continuity of care. So in our autism support classrooms that we have, and we have 5 of them around the region, our speech therapist is heavily ingrained in the classrooms that she is in. What we do is we team for each student on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, and then the teacher and our support staff in the classroom, our paraeducators, they go ahead and continue the rest of those strategies with those students when the therapist is not in the classroom. I talked a little bit about that district engagement, but also that parent engagement piece. We believe that that is the most successful piece in building that positive rapport with our families in special education and our districts that we work with. Next slide, John. So transition is a huge piece. We do believe in a warm handoff. Whether we are setting a district up for success, taking a program over, or we are coming in to take over a program and help the district in those ways. We believe in communication at the very core. Should the Lewisburg Area School District want us to come in and assist with the K-3, 4 to 5 autistic support classrooms, we would conduct a meet and greet, and that's like an open house that would generally occur in the fall. We would do that as soon as the board was ready to move forward. That would be a night where families can come in and meet the teacher and the staff and ask any questions at that time. In addition, over the summer, our staff are prepared and are willing to conduct extended school year for these classrooms according to the Lewisburg schedule, which would also provide that transition for those kiddos to be able to learn the structure and consistency and routines within the classroom, as well as families an opportunity to get to know the teacher on a more intimate level, and again, continue to ask more questions and build that rapport with the families. As well as beginning of the year activities. Our classrooms are always included in any of the beginning of year activities that the building level may have, and that would also be afforded in this instance. I'm here tonight to answer any questions that you may have, whether it be now or at a later point. I did provide my name. Here's my cell phone number and my email address.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. I'm wondering if this were something that we signed, would the summer transitioning happen this summer? And then could the meet and greet for families happen in the summer rather than waiting until the fall?
So, to answer your question, Marianne, if that's what the district chooses to do, yes. What we would like to do is provide that opportunity before that summer experience for them to get to know the teacher and ask any questions that they may be apprehensive about and feel a little bit more comfortable. But again, it's whatever the district would want to do.
Okay, I was just thinking sort of aloud about some of the concerns about wanting to meet prior to students being in a class and having those conversations ahead of that. So that we've answered that question. Thank you.
I wonder, do any districts do multi-year contracts to provide the continuity of education?
So yes, What we have set forth is an annual contract, but it renews unless the district or the IU would decide that they would like to participate in transfer of entity on March 31st. So if the district ever would want to take over the programming, they would just have to submit, it's called a separate to the state transfer of entity, that they would want to take over that classroom. I can tell you that our classrooms that we are in the Shikellamy School District, it has been over 10 years that we have been in that district in those programs.
And how in those programs, when there are concerns that parents may have, how is that handled by the IU? Is district staff involved in those conversations? When you have an IEP meeting, what does that look like? If you could kind of touch base on the
Absolutely.
communication piece.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start and then I'll let Brianna add anything to it as well. So that's a great question. When we are involved in a classroom, it's usually the IU supervisor who is the forefront, if you will. We work very collaboratively also with the building principal because things are happening at the building. So it's not just the special ed supervisor or the director of student services, but also that building level principal as well. So we usually get the information, and then what we do is we team amongst the administrators, but then also bring the family in and then have those conversations. You know, what are the trials and tribulations? What isn't working? What do we need to do to move forward? As far as the IEP team meetings that we have, we run them, but our district supervisors, there's always an administrator in all of our meetings.
Okay.
So we facilitate the IEP meeting, we're the service agency. Again, respectfully, it is between the district and the family ultimately to make decisions, but we provide the service.
Okay. And again, as it should be, I would hope if something is in a child's IEP, it is then the IU's responsibility to make sure that that STI or whatever the case may be is met through the IU.
And we partner with the regular education staff as well in the building. The teachers that we have in the district programs are so integrated into the building that you wouldn't know that it was an IU program if you walked in. Because there's so much communication happening and that information is being shared to make sure that that student's needs are being met. And IEP is being fulfilled.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the frequency of reevaluation or how the identification of a need for reevaluation would happen?
Sure, I'll go ahead if you want to talk about it in experience. So at the very least, it depends on the disability category of the student. So if a student is intellectually disabled, it's every 2 years by state regulations. Any other disability category is every 3. So that's at the very least. Let's say that there would be a concern or a medical report that might come in that the team, meaning the IU team as well as the district team, we may need to issue a permission to reevaluate to take that under consideration. And so we spearhead that because we are the front line, then that's a part of that service that we would issue the permission and do that. So at the very least, every 2 or 3 years, unless there's something that arises either on the parent behalf or we're seeing things that are not working after different strategies and things are implemented.
Or something that is working, right? Like, sure, they're succeeding at a certain level, then maybe it's time to move them to a different space.
Could be to a least restrictive environment, absolutely.
Or the next step sort of in their IEP.
So one of the ways that the value of the IU programs was communicated to us is an individual district, a special education teacher might not have any peers in that grade space, but with the IU program, then you have teachers that then have several other teachers that they can communicate with across your programs, and they do professional development together, identify best practices, kind of troubleshoot, and that sort of thing. So they have community amongst themselves. Would you say that's sort of generally the case and a big part of the value of having a cohesive program like that?
Yes. For sure. I have 9 of the 10 district programs that we have, and I hold bi-monthly connections meetings is actually what I was calling them, to provide an opportunity for our staff, paraeducators and teachers as well, to connect with one another. In addition to that, I do set up observations and other supports with teachers. If somebody has questions about something, I'm not sure about the situation, can somebody help me? We have those supports amongst teachers. We also heavily use the training consultants here at the IU, our TAC department. They come in and provide any continuing education that is identified as needed and additional supports. We have BCBA support that comes in to our autistic support classrooms frequently, who have helped identify strategies, helped with FBAs and positive support plans as well. There's a wealth of community and oh, yes. So we held an in-service day for staff to come and network and do make and takes. So they came to a centralized location, discussed some of the materials that they use in their classrooms, talked about task boxes and ways to help build student independence with those task boxes, and created them together. They also talked about ways that they manage some of the paperwork and the data collection and all of those responsibilities that come in special education to help each other with and just less ease. Yes, thank you.
Just one more question, possibly, it could be more, but you mentioned several curricula may be offered in a classroom because each student has individual needs, and one of the speakers this evening referred to the competent learner model. Can we understand a little bit more continuity of models for curricula and also how that follows the student, or does it follow the teacher? Does it go with grade? How is that all sorted?
So the CLM it is a curriculum, but it's more of a model. And the whole goal of the competent learner model is to get the student to attend to the task to be able to learn. And so there are various steps in order to get the student interested, to be able to participate. Then the goal would be to independently participate with the teacher. So that's a model. Different curriculums that we use in our classrooms. We have, this is our pilot year with the Teach Town curriculum with English Language Arts. We have been very happy with the results of our classrooms that are using that. We are currently using that in our other autistic support programs right now. We do have some other curriculums. It just depends on the district and also the family. If they've already found something that's working, such as unique. Some people are very familiar and they don't want to change. So we just continue with that curriculum for those students.
Or if something has been identified as helpful for that student, we don't want to change it, right? If you know this works for that student, you want to continue that. So that is something then that we continue with our students.
Thank you.
And I just had one more. When it is time for those reevaluations, the school psychologist that does that, is that the district school psychologist, is that the IU? How does the testing happen?
So it typically, and I'm gonna say typically because everything that we do is catered, I will tell you. So we have a school psychologist on board as a service. So, but sometimes there are different instances where the school psychologist from the district wants to take a case. And that's okay, but we do have a school psychologist available to do that. We have several.
Okay.
Oh, I just and I'm not sure if you answer, you mentioned the ESY program, and I'm not sure, have we contracted that you guys are doing that for us this summer if we transition? Is that part of the contract, or is that not determined yet?
It is, it's in the contract.
Is it? Oh.
It's like one line in like 50
Yeah.
something. For people who aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about the high school program and how the kids transition out of, their middle school into that? The Work Foundation.
Our Work Foundations program, sure. So our Work Foundations program is for students, districts who are interested in a life skills program at any age level. We have students, it's primarily the age of 16 to 21. And what we really focus on is employment, independent living skills, but also that academia piece. So we have students that come in for, the majority of the students stay all day, but we have contracts with local businesses where we are not just a workshop setting. We are taking the kids for employment out into the community to be able to transition into work after they graduate. We have a Lighthouse program that we use for our independent living skills, so learning how to cook, clean, do daily household tasks. We have almost, I think, 80 students right now who come. It is a culture that is very exciting to be in. I will tell you, the kids will tell you, they will, the smiles will gleam from ear to ear.
Just to put a plug in, if you're interested in learning more, we're having our board meeting there on Wednesday of next week. If you'd like to come see it, get a tour, hear from the kids, and see what we're talking about. It's a very special thing.
The one thing that I also wanted to say was, we started out with just providing life skills down at Work Foundations, but because in our area there was a need for high school autistic support programming. And we started with one classroom, and pending board or approval from the Bureau of Special Education at the state level, we'll have 2 high school classrooms. And it's not just a classroom where they're staying in the classroom all day. They are integrated within the culture as a whole at Work Foundations, including going out for classes with their peers, but also that employment piece and the independent living piece as well.
We'll have opportunities for clubs. They have clubs, they have a student council, and opportunities for students to take a leadership role within their community there, which is really cool to see.
I have a question. What does the transition out of Work Foundations typically look like? Like, not on the spot, but like how many people continue on with employment or continue to?
Sure. So the transition out of Work Foundation is exactly to graduation and gaining gainful employment. We have very few students who are not gainfully employed once they leave Work Foundations. And so that's the whole goal of the program. We do work with OVR, but we know that there's a limited amount of resources that they can provide. And so we try to bridge that before they go, before they graduate. Students very rarely will transition back to their home districts, because a lot of times we'll have students who may walk with their senior class, but not receive their diploma. They call it banking their diploma, and then they come with us from the age of 18 until 21, since they can stay until the age of 21.
If Mrs. Moser wouldn't mind, I'd ask her to share with everyone some historical context, because we did have a Work Foundations program that we used to hear about quite often when we had students at the high school age who needed autistic support classroom.
We had autistic support on site and then transitioned to your Work Foundations for our kids. Paula, we have some part-time and some full-time students.
Absolutely, so we, again, depending on the needs of the students that are there, we have, I believe, 2 students that spend their mornings and then they come back and are in classes. And again, those particular students also, you know, that they still are our students. They participate in, one student participates in, I believe it's 3 different sports. So, you know, they're part of their class. You know, we have other students that their needs and desires is that they want to be there full-time. So again, it can vary from year to year based upon the student. It's been a really nice partnership. And I think just the additional skills and the employment skills and the direct attention that can be given to those students and having that resource to outside whether it's businesses or community that maybe we don't have as a district, that same level of connection and resources in this broader area. They've been absolutely phenomenal about being able to connect those kids to those opportunities.
I don't think I've been at Work Foundations in several years now. I'm really looking forward to the meeting on Wednesday. but the level of pride of the students who go there and they've shown you the work that they do, they're just incredibly proud of it. It's really inspiring.
So, does anybody else have any questions? Just to kind of summarize, it sounds like once you're in a program, thinking of being, K-5 in a district or pre-K-5 in a district, you're going to potentially be in that space for a while. The students will have continuity of teacher, they'll have continuity of program, they'll have regular reevaluations, both as required and as needed.
Correct.
And you're flexible on the curricular preference. Is there anything that anyone else wants to add, or just so we have all that information? All right, well, thank you for entertaining so many questions. We don't usually grill folks in your presentations, that was very helpful for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, because we have to have one at every school board meeting, thank you to everyone who has remained in the audience, is a budget update.
Yes. I don't know how to follow that, so we're just gonna jump to the presentation. All right, so let's talk budget. Hopefully it will share on the screen here. Come on, share, there we go. All right, so some updates here. As you remember, we began this long journey back in November of 2023 with a slight budget deficit, and we've been making some changes ever since then. But there's one special thing I want to talk to you about, and you've probably seen this on the internet and in the news lately, is the basic education funding. And just wanted to compare and contrast a little bit ourselves and the good people down in Harrisburg, looking at our budget versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, bear in mind, our Lewisburg School District budget, our deadline is June 30th. And if we don't enact a balanced budget by June 30th, we will face financial penalties. It's written into the law. Technically, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has a budget deadline also of June 30th, but that deadline tends to vary based on politics. Now, I would never say this, but a cynical person might say their deadline is just whenever they feel like it. Now, I would never say that, but it can vary based on the politics. So, if we look back at a little bit of the history, and it used to be pretty easy. In 2021, we budgeted about 3.8 million of state funding, and they gave us about 3.8 million. And the following year, we budgeted about 3.9 million, and they gave us 3.9 million, and everything was going fine. And I like guessing these numbers because they're pretty easy to work with. And so in 22-23, I was like, okay, well, we'll bump it up a little bit here, maybe get a little closer to 4 million. Wait a minute, what happened? The big black box that is in Harrisburg actually spit out more money than we were anticipating. So we wind up, instead of 3.9 million, we wind up with 4.9 million. What happened there? So, okay, all right, well, we're gonna bump it up here. 23-24, we're gonna budget 4.5 million. Let's see what happens. Oh my goodness, 5.8 million this year alone. And again, they don't tell us this before June 30th when we have to set our budget, when we have to figure out what we're going to budget. No, they come in sometimes many months afterwards and go, oh, by the way, here you go. So far this year, we've decided to bump it up even more. And let's roll the dice. Let's take a calculated risk and perhaps there will be more. Well, unfortunately, the state Supreme Court said your funding formula is illegal, please try again. And our friends in Harrisburg are now having deep philosophical discussions about what the basic education funding should look like. So that's why there's a bunch of red question marks there. We don't know what is coming. So with that in mind, we do have our most recent budget update here. And as you can see, our deficit that was at the top here has been eliminated. We've had some personnel updates. We've had a decrease in the PSERS rate. We did add an additional police officer. We've had a few retirements for a little bit of savings. You'll see in the middle of the page there our additional estimated basic education funding. That's in the number you saw previously. And that has helped us bring our property tax increase down to 5%. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here. No one's requested any sabbaticals. As Mrs. Moser has mentioned, we're looking at one position adding related to gifted 3 to 8. And on a slight positive note, we have seen our health insurance increase only went up 6%, not the full 8%. So yay, savings. So that's where our revised budget lands, we have eliminated the budget deficit with a 42.4 million projected budget. Now, that being said, 5% is not the final option. I believe that, as we've talked about, the basic education funding is under review in Harrisburg since it was declared unconstitutional. What we're hearing through the grapevine is that the 24-25 state budget, although due June 30th, may not actually get passed until November of 2024, after the election. So with that, I would like to offer the board an opportunity to take a calculated risk. You see some options up there, and you see the different percentages of tax increase and the related estimated additional state funding required to meet those. Now again, we don't know what the big black box in Harrisburg is going to spit out. So whatever the board is comfortable with, you give me that direction and we'll proceed with that for our proposed final and final budgets. Just bearing in mind that if the state funding isn't increased as we budget or as we expect, then we would have to foot the bill, but we do have reserves for those purposes. And then you can see below there millage increases and the impact on a $100,000 assessed home. Something also to keep in mind is our Act 1 limit was 6.1% this year, near the bottom of the list of CSIU districts. So getting it down to 5% I thought was pretty good, but if the board would like to go lower, we can do that as well. And then just something else to keep in mind, some folks may be hearing in the neighboring districts that some neighboring districts, based on the basic education funding, are deciding to have minimal or no tax increases whatsoever. I would just like to remind folks that many of the districts around us receive significantly more state funding than we do. Sometimes in the neighborhood of 40, 50, even 60% of their budget comes from the state, whereas in Lewisburg, only about 20 to 30% of our funding comes from the state budget. So with that exciting update, I will open it up for a straw poll discussion of the board as to how you would like me to proceed.
So I don't know if everyone was following along with that auctioneer's pace, but the situation is this: we have to pass a budget by June 30th. We do potentially, I don't know the feeling of the whole board, but I would say in general are not excited about wanting to do a 5% tax increase. So we're looking at ways that we can estimate what may happen. There has been a year in recent memory, several of us were on the board when this happened, when Harrisburg didn't pass a budget until 9 months into our fiscal year, which meant that we had to draw on our budget reserves, which is like your bank account, your savings account, and that triggers an audit, which is a lot more time for John. But if that is going to happen anyway, because they may not give us the money until many months into our school year, it's not as bad as if we didn't anticipate that, meaning to take the calculated risk and potentially hope for the extra few $100,000 from the state. So with those pieces in place, I know we have a lot of education students with us tonight who probably are asking questions like, why is this a thing that we have to talk about? Because what this impacts is staffing, it impacts contracts we can sign, it impacts programs we can offer. One of the examples that Mrs. Moser will share later is the idea of having a more uniform gifted program as well as having a greater continuity of the special ed that we've already talked about. So both ends of programming in general, from pre-K all the way through 12. And these are tough decisions to make. So maybe slide 4 and 5, or yeah, we can go back to slide 4 for a second so people understand how we got to the 42.5 million. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Those are just changes, right?
Yeah, no, so I'm
That's
saying.
how we went from the preliminary budget.
Right,
to
right.
Yep.
So these are all things everyone gets why we were at that number now. All right, so then we're on slide 5 to talk about. Anybody?
I just feel like if we had the budget, if we got the extra the last 2 years, then we can go for a lower level And if it does come in, the state does come in lower than we expect, we're covered. And we're covered without any kind of
Oh, nothing catastrophic
issue.
happens,
Like,
yeah.
we're, so I'm not sure why we wouldn't do that.
The only thing is, we don't have so much operating budget that we wanna cut it very close,
Well, I
right?
wouldn't want us to be like skimming the surface, but
Right.
what would be comfortable?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the flip side of that is that next year, we may be looking at a larger increase because we did not budget
Right.
for it this year.
Right.
Yeah, that can always happen.
So,
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna go with the lowest, given, I mean, inflation
No.
numbers are in, we're minimum 3.5% year over year, so that's what we're dealing with. And our healthcare costs went up 6%, and that's significant.
And next year, they are forecast to go up 8 based on our run rate, so, yeah.
There hasn't been any like news from Harrisburg, like tinklings, right, of like what's
There's always news.
the feeling,
Yeah, the
you
news
know?
primarily is that you have an even split in the House of Representatives and a slight edge for the Republicans in the Senate, and you have a Democratic governor, so you have
So it's who knows.
3 groups that are all fighting amongst themselves, and yeah, I mean, there's news, but there's not progress.
It's so tricky.
Safe to say I agree with Mary Ann. Typically, as usual, I'm in favor of the lowest increase that we can afford to do. I think 300,000 is a fair risk given the balance that we have to potentially absorb if for some reason the extra funding doesn't appear, and it may not, because it truly is a mystery. I'm confident if there was a way to figure out what it was, somebody sitting around this table would have figured it out already, so there's not, but I like 3.5% a whole lot better than 5%.
And I'm sort of in that 3.5 to 4, like I'm more, I think, just erring on the side of more caution. But I'm in the same camp.
Remind everybody of our fund balance, John.
Fund balance is approximately $6 million, which is 2 months of operating cash.
So the 300,000 would be, you can figure out what portion of that would be, or the 200,000, wherever you happen to fall,
The easier, thank you. The other thing to do is to think about the districts that actually had to take out loans to cover payroll when it came around to be March and April of the year when the budget never got passed. So you said we had 2 months of operating,
We have 2
Which-
months, yeah,
out
that
of 10,
will,
so that's 20%. That's close to the edge in terms of what we get from the state. So we would really be running it.
yes, now, that would carry us through, because again, Lewisburg is
Timing.
very much dependent on local support.
Right.
And so typically in the August and September timeframe, tax collection, and that's when that comes in, that helps us weather any budgetary storms in Harrisburg.
Would it make sense to look at potentially not adding these additional positions that we're looking at because we are so out, like, of the unknown of what we're gonna get? Because, I mean, every year we're at the unknown, but we're really at the unknown this year because they're looking at redoing the formulary or potentially redoing it because of the unconstitutional, compared to just guessing off of it. And then that would give us a little bit more grace on it, because, I mean, I agree with Corey, I'm definitely leaning towards the 3.5 and knowing that we would need to make it up next year if something happened, but I mean, going on the now and the cost of things and how things are affecting people and how much groceries are costing, everything like that, I would like to hope that next year would be a little bit better.
there's also a very real possibility that they don't figure out a new formula, they
Right.
just throw a pile of money.
Right, there is.
Yeah, they'll just stick with the status quo.
With what they have.
These numbers do incorporate the positions comfortably, they are not anything that we should be worried about.
So removing any of these doesn't drastically
Doesn't
change
move
any of
No.
the.
Right.
No.
And we could end up with $500,000 more from the state than we've budgeted.
Anything's
Right.
possible, I mean, you saw 2 years ago, the formula spit out a higher number than anybody was expecting.
But at the same time, we also had higher expenses because inflation was so high, so like I'm thinking about that, I may be okay with the 3.5% because we still have contingency and we have a budgetary reserve, yeah. So, not that we like to continuously wipe that out, that needs deferred maintenance and everything else, but.
Yes, the administration is comfortable with 3.5%, absolutely.
Does anybody want to see any other variation on the changed expenses or anything? Okay. I'm sorry, I can't get it. I'm very sorry that I overlooked the other CSIU representatives here with us this evening. But is it okay if we go back to the
Absolutely,
previous
yes.
item? I
I'm good,
apologize.
so, yep, I'm good.
Okay, so, John, do you have anyone else that you would like us to know about?
Are the Bucknell students heading out?
Oh, you're gonna miss every
you guys.
vote. Oh my gosh.
They were promised that they could be done. No, I would love for the fact that several of you have stayed to be part of our meeting tonight. John, you have senior cabinet people here with you. Again, we're broadening our awareness of CSIU services. I would love to hear for a few minutes about your roles and
You
responsibilities.
guys have a long night, we won't take a lot of your time.
I know.
We'll give people
Go
a chance
right
to
ahead.
understand who they are and then a little bit about what they do, like a minute.
Absolutely.
Please.
So my name's Rayanne Crystal, I'm the Administrative Support Director here at the IU. I work with the leadership team. I do things around strategic planning, policy development and renewals, leadership development, and also as a service to your district, I oversee the school safety and security coordinators of the region and provide networking meetings for the school police officers.
Sharon?
Jared Lehman, Chief Innovation Officer. I oversee the marketplace here, which includes corporate purchasing, so contracts like KPN and PEPM, so the biotechnology products we have under contract, roofing, fields, modulars, there are contracts. Financial and student information system softwares, we provide that too. And then also cyber and tech support here.
So cybersecurity is a very big deal. When you're responsible for 300 school districts' data, we become a national expert on cybersecurity and we provide those resources to your districts to try and help them be safe. Brian?
Good evening, Brian Snyder, Chief Financial and Operations Officer here at the IU. I oversee 3 divisions here, the business office, everything that goes with that as far as budgeting and cash management, risk management, investment, things like that. Our HR department in charge of talent recruitment and retention and things. And then I oversee the local health insurance consortium that provides medical, dental, vision, and life insurance to 20 local school districts.
Bernadette?
Stand up back here. Hi everyone, Bernadette Burkle, I'm the Chief Outreach Officer. So I oversee PR and communications internally for the CSIU, but then also externally for our region in any way that we can be of help, especially telling your stories. I would also, because the conversation has been so rich tonight, there is a wonderful story told from the perspective of those students at Work Foundations Plus, which is worth checking out, as well as other stories that talk to all of our programs here. I also oversee all of our workforce development programs post K-12 when our students become part of our community, all our mental health initiatives that we're working on here, and our LPN center right down the street when you came in, which has an open house coming up next week. And we try to keep in touch with all of your health occupation students. It's a wonderful opportunity for them in 1 year to become an LPN in our region.
Mental health services?
Yeah, I mentioned we do have the SAMHSA grant right now, which is providing services with a liaison from your district, learning about that. We just had our Youth Mental Health Summit at the Campus Theater, 2nd annual, really trying to engage some student voice around mental health and understand the concerns and see what services that we can support districts with as needed.
Thank you for giving us a minute.
Thank you.
We'll get you back.
Thank you again. And just like we excuse the swimmers and the Bucknell students, take your leave as he allows. And thank you, and thank you.
Just one quick follow-up, the the proposed final budget will be up for vote at our May 9th meeting, and then the final budget will be up for a vote at our June 13th meeting, first meeting in June.
Thank you, John. Thank you, thank you.
Final.
Yes, the really final.
Really final.
All right, so our first action is some old business, which is the CSIU classroom user agreement. What do we say? A motion?
Motion.
Okay, motion approved. Do I have a second? Second, Dr. Mattis, thank you. And I'll open it for discussion.
I would like to move to table this, till after the workshop. So I'm putting that motion to move to table this.
Okay. Do we hear a second?
A second.
Okay, we can still discuss tabling. And so, is there anything particular that you would want to see researched?
So I think it has more to do with what we've heard tonight and feedback that we've gotten. I think that this doesn't say, I mean, it's not to say that I disagree that this is a move for the district to take. But I do think that families do feel that they haven't been part of a conversation or part of a communication with this. And it is probably statistically always going to be a small group of people that we deal with in here. And one of the things that I hear a lot, and I've heard a lot tonight, and I've heard a lot in discussions I've had with people, is talking about children being with their peers and being in this classroom with their peers. And I think sometimes we're forgetting that the kids' peers are also all the kids in the grade. And I just think about the continuity that's been talked about, and I think that we really need to role model listening to people about their disabilities and just working with adults with disabilities and seeing how often the adults with those disabilities are not listened to, and we have families that are really just asking to be listened to and communicated. And we may, as a district, need to make a decision that, I mean, we're never gonna make everybody happy, and there's always going to be people that are not happy with that, but I think that we haven't done our due diligence with listening to those voices. And I think that we all can make the decision of what we think is the best, and I think everybody wants to make that best choice. But we have people that have lived experiences as parents and I think it's just important for us to role model that we're going to listen to people.
So that raises two questions for me. One, would tabling and the delay in a decision negatively impact ultimate implementation if that's the board's decision? And two, if we can delay without negatively impacting potential decision, is it possible to get some of the experts we heard from tonight to be part of our open discussion on the 25th?
I'll respectfully request that they attend and share much as they have here tonight. We know that ideally they would have liked the decision in March in order to lay all the preliminary planning steps that were admired as needed, necessary, and thought to be very time involved. So we know we meet twice per month. We would really need to be taking that action, I would say, before the balance of April has passed. We're already setting it back some, but I'm more interested that we also feel confident in the decision that we make. And John, I know Terry stepped back over to class. We're probably buying 2 weeks.
The one thing you hear about is the hiring of teachers.
Yes.
And staffing programs, you want the best people. And we're getting into hiring season for teachers. So I completely understand your motions want to be clear, but you could put the program in, be a detriment to the program if you delay too long.
But we're not hiring any IU teachers, correct? We're just moving one from life skills to
The good
autistic
thing in
support.
our situation is both IU employees stay. And so I will only say we could see that as a set aside rather than a complicating. I'm very pleased that both teachers already familiar with our 2 school buildings, our programs, our kids, the full staff, et cetera, come as part of this change that we're proposing. So that's a plus in that respect. Stephanie, anything? I'll put you a bit on the spot. You've listened tonight.
The IU programs are already in the building, and so it is a program switch. We're really changing life skills to autistic support. We've already kind of collaborated with some transition planning ahead of time because we want to make this successful and that those teachers know our students. They're going into the classrooms observing, they're meeting with our teachers, like this is a transition we want to have that success. And like Terry said, we want to make sure that in this spring, like once this decision's made, is that we can have that back to school, like that meet and greet night where they can use speech therapists and OT and other staff that they're going to work with and feel that they can come into the classroom and have their ask questions, have them answered directly by the IU staff, for us to be present and then transition to that summer to kind of continue that relationship building and that support. And so that by the time we start in the fall, that all those pieces and those things that we want are in place.
And 2 weeks could negatively impact that? I'm not being snarky, I literally am asking the question because I don't know.
I would not want to see us go any longer than that. And in the 2 weeks, addressing whatever feels like it's more resource information, clarity, confirmation of things, would be what would come to you, so that sitting as a board, you could take the vote in action that evening would be most important.
So if we did the action portion of the 25th meeting last.
Right, that's exactly what I was gonna recommend. Thank you. The other piece of this is, while the user agreements are typically standard, what we may do is to capture in the minutes of the board meeting voting part, put a list of sort of answers to the questions. So the, what's it called, when we write a short statement, like a preamble to it. So it doesn't impact the contract as written, but it's captured as the board intention to respond to some of the things that were brought up earlier.
And I mean, I just want to put out there for thought for this. We took 3 meetings to discuss doing a turf field. We took 3 or 4 meetings to discuss the amount of time that we would use we would lose for band and chorus when the middle school schedule happened. So I think that respectfully, we could take some time to discuss this with the families that it affects. And I think also understanding that it is a voting action, so like you could vote not to pass it. Because I think there's a lot of, not that I think that's happening, I mean, I don't think that, but I do think even all the discussion we're having now is really kind of saying that we're not even gonna listen to families, because we're just discussing, I feel how this is where the transition is, this and that. And I mean, I just have gotten a lot of feedback about people feeling not heard. And I just wanna make sure that families are feeling heard and that that what they're saying can affect change, because it's important to them. And I don't think that we're really taking into consideration sometimes that this is, you know, a parent's whole life, you know, advocating for their child that has these disabilities that they're gonna have for their whole life. And I mean, even prior to being on the board or anything, there is a stigma that Lewisburg does not want to really support people that have especially significant disabilities. I mean, it's out there, it's what people say. I've heard it, I've heard preschool teachers, I mean, my mother-in-law worked for Summit, and Summit teachers would say like, well, yeah, Lewisburg doesn't do a good job with special education. So I just wanna make sure we're really listening to, even if that's wrong, because I know that's not what we want. I know we want to do that, we wanna do everything, but just that perception is out there. So that is why I do think it is important to table this and listen.
I had one more technical question, and it's technically not with the IU contract, so I'm sorry if I diverge a little bit here, but right now we have the autistic support class at Kelly and we have the life skills class at Kelly. Those teachers would be swapping. We have an autistic support class at Lintown, but we do not currently have a life skills
No.
class at Lintown.
This class at Lintown is life skills.
There is a life skills class.
It is not autistic support.
It is not autistic support. So the students who are in the autistic support class at Kelly currently will be going,
We would have to plan in program for them.
so it doesn't yet exist, right?
We would have to work to plan in program.
But we know we have at least one third grader in the autistic support class.
Yes.
So we should be planning and programming
Yeah.
for that student.
Yes. And we are.
Okay, and so
It just, if we don't go with the IU plan, it just creates a change to that current plan.
but right now, the life skills class is run by the IU.
That is correct.
And so where, if this passes, where will the autistic support students go at Lintown?
They will go to the IU classroom because it will be an autistic support classroom if it passes.
Okay, then where will the life skills children go?
They will be supported by our teachers in learning support.
So the learning support teachers will be responsible for the life skills program.
We have 3 special education
Three,
teachers.
and that would divide out by itinerant, supplemental, and those students who need full-time.
So where will the students who need full-time life skills be receiving their education at Lintown?
A lot of our life skills students are actually out in the regular education classroom.
But if they can't be full-time based on the
They're
way the
not-
percentages work out, they're not full-time.
They're not full-time, no. And even at Kelly, they're not full-time, they're out with their regular education peers. They might be pulled back in for English and math or reading instruction, but they're out with their regular education peers.
Okay,
And the teachers.
and that's where they should be.
Yes.
But it makes me nervous as a former learning support teacher,
Mm-hmm.
the needs of students in the life skills classes versus the needs of a student with a learning disability are very different. So that is a little unsettling that those teachers are now supposed to be experts at life skills as well, if that's what the plan is. Thanks.
My understanding was the diagram that you provided was, which I think has been shared with everyone, of which students are currently life skills, which are moving grades, meaning, and moving schools, and how that would impact where students are. So if you haven't seen that, I can share that.
So you have a motion to table.
We do have a motion to table. Is there any further discussion? So then the other piece of what we're talking about is to have the work session in advance of a vote on the 25th. But that's something that we, will plan for in the agenda planning. All right, we can take this by voice vote. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So our new business, the first one is a student for the ag program. Mrs. Moser.
Sure. We are in a cooperative agreement as old as recorded with Mifflinburg that when a Lewisburg student wants to study agricultural education, they have the opportunity to attend Mifflinburg's agricultural program. We have one rising 9th grader who is seeking to do that. Dad's letter is attached. You've had opportunity to see that. We pay that tuition cost in that cooperative agreement. I ask that we grant the opportunity. She's an excellent student in our middle school. I've been in communication with Dr. Dady. First, we say, yes, we want the child to have the opportunity and will commit to the tuition. And then they, in turn, at their next board meeting, would accept that student who would register and attend. We do not transport, that's fully known and understood by parent. And I would say over each and every of the last several years, we occasionally have one. We might skip a year and not have. We had one year where there were 2. They tend to stay the full 4 years, or they opt for tech school sometimes in their senior year over at Sun. It's been a good relationship. I would recommend we afford the opportunity for young Miss Kiefer.
Moved.
Second.
Mover is Sims, second by Mr. Fetzer. Any discussion? All right, Paula?
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Our next item is the policy for first reading, admission of students. Anything particular you want to call out?
Just to point out, we only have a single one this time. Don't think for a minute the policy committee has not been busy. But this one in particular, with the admission of beginners, simply inserts some flexible language to appreciate the individual circumstances sometimes that brings us a kindergarten registration just outside of that September 1, or because that particular child is very ready to attend. We work with parents and family in that context, and so the insertion is just some latitude to give us opportunity to examine that on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. We have a motion?
Motion.
I may
Moved by
have
Dr.
spoken
Grant.
before.
Second by Ms. Lyons. Any discussion? Follow.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
Mr. Peak?
Yes.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next item are some job description revisions for the Director of Special Education and the Certified Instructional Aide.
And always at a time when it is prudent to do so, we examine the language in our job descriptions. These two descriptions have been enhanced for some clarity of responsibility as we get ready to post vacancies in this area.
Thank you. Your motion?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Mattis.
Second?
Second by Ms. Kraus. Any discussion?
I'd just like to offer the request that I made earlier that we add in a descriptor on the Director of Special Education, that that person is the designated liaison between families and the district.
So Paula, did you catch that? The language is to add, and, right, perfect. So with that revision?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
The waiver of the cleaning green rollback taxes. John, as quickly as you can.
Okay, without going into all the arcana, there is a bit of land in Kelly Township that a farmer would like to sell to a local house of worship so that they can expand their parking and put in some detention ponds. The problem is that the entire parcel, all 92 acres, is in the Clean and Green program, and in order to subdivide the property to move 2 acres to the house of worship, and then move the other 90 acres back into the Clean and Green, we as a taxing authority have to waive the Clean and Green taxes so that this transaction can take place. The majority remains in Clean and Green. The 2 acres comes out of Clean and Green. We receive a small rollback later on. But again, the initial step is we have to agree to the waiver so that the majority of the property can remain in the Clean and Green program later on after it's subdivided. If we don't waive this, then they owe the full Clean and Green rollback taxes on the whole 92 acres, and then the land is out of the program and can be used for any purpose. And the goal is to obviously keep farmland and land like this in the Clean and Green program. So it's the administration's recommendation to you this evening to approve the waiver of the Clean and Green rollback taxes.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Fetzer.
Second.
We'll give it to you. There's second by Ms. Haynos. Any discussion?
John, we're not the only entity that has to approve this. Have the other entities already approved this?
I believe it's on their radar, it's on their agenda.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And all 3 entities would have to agree. So if, only 2 of 3, then it obviously would not go through.
Yes. Paula?
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, the renewal of the high school land development plan.
Yes, so we are in the process of the 5-year renewal of our high school land development plan, and like 5 years ago, we're asking you to approve the stormwater management agreement as well as the improvements guarantee agreement that we will be signing along with Kelly Township that will move our 5-year land development plan forward. So we ask you to approve them this evening.
Motion?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Mattis, seconded by Dr. Grant. Any discussion? Paula?
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, Mrs. Moser.
All right, we're into the information items on our agenda. Let me take you through the first one, school-age childcare refresh. The slides are up on the screen. John will take us through at my direction. We have operated on-site at Kelly Elementary School since August in 2012, what is called school-age childcare. This was an idea at the time that allowed us to take over a program that had been in place by Some Child Development. Some Child Development, now known as Summit Learning in our community, and the idea that we could run our own before and after school, hire our own staff, and reap some economic opportunity, as well as keep in mind the sole purpose guiding it was to be supervised childcare on site in a building familiar to our students, staff, and family, and provide a safe and secure place for them to be. The viability of it was there. So 4 teachers and 8 paraprofessionals and yours truly began that process of licensing with what is now known as the Department of Human Services. It was Health and Human Services at the time. So I took the course, passed the license, we reviewed all that was necessary. Seriously, supervised childcare regulations are very important and they are very detailed. And so we began to operate on site at Kelly, held to a series of regulations in legal code to provide before and after school child care for students ages 5 to 15. My ladies were very proud of opening and operating SAC, and we have been very fortunate to do what I feel is an excellent job with that program, and we even expanded to offering summer program as well. Go ahead, John. Currently, our SAC program, as it tells you there on the PowerPoint, is indeed in place at Kelly Elementary. And I would note here, as the bullet says, in addition to early morning and after school, we are there on weather emergency days, certain holidays, and in-service days as well. It is fee-based, and again, we adhere to regulations that are set in place by the Department of Human Services. The 2 graphs represent for you some information over time. I'm going to just take you in slight reverse order. Enrollment to the right shows you with the 2-color key code there, both school year and summer SAC. It is a valued program in the Lewisburg community, and I love that it's part of our outreach to the community at large. We are on site with students who know us, know our staff, and we provide that continuity of allowing parents and family to balance work-life schedules, etc. To the left, you can see the financial information. Keep in mind there's a pandemic year in there as well. And again, both the yellow line and the white line representing the finances when we began and where we stand here most recently with the 2022-23 financial information. Go ahead. All right. What I propose that we take a serious look at, and tonight information, not action, is refreshing our SAC program to make it more viable in our community. These are some proposed considerations. I am proposing that we disengage from the state-regulated Department of Health and Human Services program and operate our own program. By moving away from the regulated program, we would not hold to the quotas of 1 adult to 8 at the youngest age and 1 to 10 at the older elementary age, and instead be able to simply operate before and after school supervised child care on site at Kelly Elementary. By removing the fee, by removing the pay, and operating a program at no cost to our families, we are removing the paperwork that many families must work through with the child care subsidy payments through ELRC. Many of our families are challenged by that process. We would also remove the financial hardship. There is a proportion of our population in the Lewisburg community that are what we've come to call more recently ALICE families, asset limited families in our community, will not qualify for the subsidized payments. Their income is just above that, but struggle to balance the cost of childcare before and after school, while working the employment-life balance that is very real to all families, or many families in our community. I would ascertain that it would still be quality supervision, our own staff, on site, operating in Kelly, very much the program as it has been. But we would simply pay those individuals supervising through district funds if we were to reorganize. John, the last? That is the last. So I propose the idea to you that we consider removing the fees and instead see this as a good opportunity to continue to provide the service to our families as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Will we still do the summer program?
So summer's in place this year. Summer presents another unique challenge, and if you look at our graphs, we are smaller in numbers and we don't financially operate at a profit in summer. There are more choices for our family and the community now for summertime. Our program has never operated 5 days a week all summer long with family commitment to that kind of programming, which is more familiar in the child care facilities where you pay the fee regardless of whether or not you use the program. We've only ever operated on a pay per use, but summer has presented the weeks they are traveling, the weeks they are with family, the opportunities our children have through summer that are not the same as that early AM and PM on school days. So we are operating this summer, but it would be with the intention of stepping away from summer programming the following summer. It's the least viable of the systems. Go ahead.
And for clarification, it would only be on school days, so we would no longer be on weather days or in-service days, just the 180 school days.
That's John's idea. We're still discussing all of
That's
that.
what
We're still discussing. This is not anything beyond the opportunity to bring this forward for consideration, and that's important to do in an information meeting in this setting at this point. But yes, that is under consideration. Thank you, John.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Chris.
sorry, what would the ratio be, since we were going
So
by
we
what
would
the
want to
state-
have our families still sign up, and we would absolutely want adequate. We know that the state is gonna stay with free breakfast, so imagine the drop off in the morning and all kids being fed. And just as we supervise now in our hallways at Kelly and Lyntown and on our playgrounds at Kelly and Lyntown, we would absolutely put supervision there to be sure all kids were well supervised.
And the staff would get paid?
Yes, they would.
It would be
We would work with that similar to as we
like
do
with
now.
coaches or something, right? Would it
More
be
an
like,
hourly.
just an hourly?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an hourly rate that's already established. It's encompassed in our financial planning. And it would typically continue to be our paras and sometimes our secretaries and sometimes our teachers. But again, outside of contractual obligated time, of course.
Do we have any indication that attendance would go back up if we remove the fees? Is
I
there,
will tell you the number of families that struggle, and the ability to pay for the programming is one of the reasons I bring you this.
so
Yes.
I expected that, but are we prepared staffing wise for additional staff to supervise? You know, if our numbers double, we're going to have to bring in additional staff.
I would think we would be prepared from our existing willingness on the part of our paras. They enjoy the opportunity, they genuinely interact with the kids and are there on site. Yeah.
If I could add, it was described to me as some of these kids, it's just an extra 15 or 20 minutes in the morning because the bus is too late, you know, for the parent to get to work on time. And then in the afternoon, it's often just a matter of another 30 or 40 minutes to allow for someone to come pick them up, so they're not getting dropped off at home alone. Is that, I mean, that's how it was characterized, would you say that's kind of what you see a lot of?
Yeah, and we've met with the director of SAC, Melissa Herb, and several of the employees that have been there since its inception. So we've communicated with them, picked their brain on thoughts and questions, and it does seem like even when they open as early as they do, it's not used. There might be one child there at that time. It's the crunch time right before school and after school, and we
And our
work with
bus
them along the way,
run
and they feel very
times work.
comfortable and
It's an idea whose time has come is
Yeah.
kind of where it feels.
And there are gonna be even more, I think, childcare options that are
There will
growing.
be.
Right, exactly.
There will
So
be.
the
We
people
know
who
that.
wanna do sort of like Miller Connected, et cetera.
Our audience is definitely younger children. We're seeing the 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. We have a few that ride a Lyntown shuttle, but by that time, they are ready for other opportunities if families can afford to provide that. If not, that's where our niche is for our students.
We're minding the gap in a lot of ways.
Truly.
And another little thing that we've looked at and talked about is there have been times where, especially in the winter months, when you notice them more, that children are dropped off before our doors open and parents leave. So
Yeah.
kids are there at the side door. This gives them the opportunity to come directly inside. They can get breakfast right away. It may only be 10, 15 minutes, but they can come right in right now and we don't have to worry. You hope you catch it and you see someone's there and can just bring them in, but there have been times that there just have been kids unsupervised waiting to come in, so now they can come right in.
That's good. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Thank you.
Yeah, our next item is the new support staff handbook.
All right, I'm gonna take that one as well. You have it in draft, hence you have the copy of it that has not yet been finished in terms of all editing and checking for the spelling and the encompassing of everyone. I will tell you, this was a chore this time. It's time for renewal of the support staff handbook. It is a 4-year in length document. It is the labor agreement with all our support staff. Keep in mind, we were bringing back into this handbook our formerly unionized employees, as well as our longstanding non-unionized support staff as well. So it encompasses a lot of smaller subgroups within the support staff. My thanks to Mr. Fetzer, Mr. Heath, Mrs. Lyons, Mrs. Hanos, for taking part in this effort. We met with the Support Staff Council, took their most fervently wished for ideas and thoughts, and I'm very pleased that we were able to incorporate much of what they were asking for. And so you see it in draft form. When you see it again at the next meeting, you'll see it in that finalized form for a vote of action to approve. I'll answer any questions, or John, my editor-in-chief, or any of the board committee that helped to bring the handbook together.
Any comments at this time?
Please read, reflect, and don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you for everyone
Thank
who
you.
worked on that. I will keep my remarks very brief, just hitting some highlights. So to reiterate, we will have a work session for the April 25th meeting. It will precede the business portion of the meeting. And so at that time, we will talk about special education. We will talk about the comprehensive plan goals, programmatic and educational outcomes, and the fine-tuning recommendations regarding staffing, budgetary updates, and capital project updates. So that will be what we can all discuss and get feedback from the public on, and then we will proceed to the work session of the meeting. Other things we talked about earlier will delay till the May committee of the whole work session. And with that, Kathy, back to you.
All right. My report tonight is essentially oral. I did attach one document for you, but let me begin. Gratitude and sincere appreciation. Dr. Karelja, senior members of his staff still here, and thank you. We are so appreciative of time and opportunity to meet here this evening, learn more about CSIU offerings. I appreciate that very much. Terry Locke, I know, has left the room, but again, she and Rihanna providing the information, obviously important for everybody's understanding this evening. And I thank our parents that spoke so candidly and freely with what is the importance to the programming as well. I appreciate first your emails and then your speaking this evening. Always, 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 I want to point out when you get to the consent agenda, it's never small dollars when it's Green Dragon Foundation. And what I love in the report is you can even see the variety of areas that they have funded with the generosity of their hard work every day. So I call attention to that. The personnel report tonight reflects the resignation of Mrs. Beaver. My heartfelt gratitude and thanks for 3 years' time and service to us in the world of special education. That's hard work. And thank you. Best wishes to your new opportunity in State College. Appreciate it. And finally, the attachment that you have. John referenced budgeting processing. We've referenced staffing tonight, so I share with you our monthly report. That's April's student enrollments across K to 12 in every grade level, as well as some of our program enrollments, so that you can see it's ongoing work to balance staffing needs with budgetary parameters that obviously are important. Current kindergarten enrollment is 105, still tends to fluctuate from now till we open again in August, but that's a pretty good number for us at this time of the year. Our numbers for Sun, ATI, and our numbers for early college are still evolving, so I don't share those in the report you have, but they too are a part of the big picture that we're working on. So I simply tell you, We're a works in progress at this time of the year in March, but we come to those decisions and those resolutions with respect to budgeting and staffing as we continue through here to the end of our academic year. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is board liaison and committee reports. Jordan or Marianne, would you like to hit any highlights for us?
Sure, the IU report is in there as an attachment. We had a really great presentation by, I forget the name of it, the CSO program. And I actually had I got a bunch of the little flyers and they're in my car. So I will share those all with you next time. But there was a student here who is in that program. It was really exciting to see that young man become a chief science officer. And these are things that can happen in all the districts. So just take a look at that. And please take a look every once in a while if you have time at the website. There's some great stories. I think actually this week they posted something from the Youth Mental Health Summit. So.
Okay, thank you. Jordan.
I'm just reviewing quickly because I can't remember the timeline. The HOSA competitions and Skills USA, there were a lot of students across the 5 sending districts that I can't remember if it was before or after our board meeting over there, but just a tremendous, another year of tremendous competitions and success at those competitions. So if they're not in here, they'll be coming. So again,
And
just
we've
a lot
had
of.
some Lewisburg students distinguish themselves. We'll bring them to a board meeting for recognition as well.
Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve. Does anybody have anything they would hold out?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kraus,
Second.
second by Ms. Lyons. Unless there's any discussion.
Just one quick
Oh, go ahead.
question that just occurred to me. I know that it's an annual agreement with Geisinger. Does that change if and when Geisinger, becomes Rising Health? What does that, I'm assuming that's all addressed. The legalities of all of that are beyond
The
my.
Geisinger name stays the same. The only thing is they now will have additional financial backing from Rising Health. But the Geisinger name, programs, and people all stay in place, so, yeah.
Well, we had conversation directly with them today, so we have it here with confidence at this time and opportunity. Thank you for asking them.
Question on the same item. Do we have a sense of what the monetary value of that is? Since it's I think I read in it's a donation in kind, the services. Do we have a sense
So
of
we
what the
pay for
value
the
of that?
athletic training services from Geisinger, but the family doctor services
Right.
are what the donation
Okay.
is. And the last time we've had to pay for a school doctor might be your only historical reference.
Yeah, we were in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 10,000, depending on what they were required, what games they attended, what functions they provided, so it's a decent value, yeah. Yep.
That's the kind of stuff we need to start keeping track of.
Thank you.
Now I think we're.
Yes, Paula.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Dr. Mattis?
Yes.
Ms. Stanton?
Yes.
Mr. Fetzer?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Haynos?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Jablonski?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus? Yes. Motion carried.
So our next item is citizens' comments to the board on any non-agenda items. Is there anyone with comments?
I believe we heard from them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Our next item is director's comments. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Mattis.
Just thank you to the IU for your hospitality tonight. This was wonderful. The art out in the hallway is amazing. If I could buy it, I might try to. And congratulations to our swimmers. Great work representing Lewisburg and the sport. And appreciation to the folks that came to speak tonight. It takes courage to get up before a board and say things, and I appreciate that courage myself, and so thank you for that. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm really glad everybody's here. I feel like, you know, the kid that gets to bring something into show and tell, only brought you all here to see them show and tell. So I'm glad everybody's getting a little bit of a feel for what happens here, and the good people who make it happen. I'm also grateful for community members who are willing to step up and say hard things, for board members who are here to support them, and the conversation that happened tonight. And the swim team, go them.
Right.
Oh, me.
Yeah. Yes, go to the swim team and to Kimberly Shannon for 4 years of gold. That's such an achievement. So that's fantastic. I've never been here, so yes, thank you for being here. I think this is such a cool opportunity, and all the programs you have here are really amazing. And it was nice to hear. I support people that come out of Work Foundations, so it's nice to hear kind of more about that, because I've never actually went to Work Foundations. So that was kind of exciting to hear about. Also plug, April, since I did last night for March, is Autism Awareness Month. So just another one. And if anybody has some time, something that has been circulating on social media last month, there's a really good, really short video that came out from the National Down Syndrome Society about assumptions for people with disabilities. It's got, people probably have seen it, it's gotten a lot of circulation, but it is really good about assumptions, and it's really cute. It's a young woman and doing things like going up to a bar and the bartender automatically giving her a soda, and just all of those different things, and just knowing how important it is that we assume competency for people. So yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, I also just wanted to thank the parents who came today to talk about their students with special needs, and also several of the parents emailed us, and I just really appreciate folks sharing their stories, right? It's hard, we try to get out and know what's going on, but we can't know everything, and so I really appreciate that, hearing both about the joys, amazing teachers, and also the challenges and things that can be better, and that's how change happens, so thank you so much for doing that. And I also wanted to plug too the teacher training grant that we got at the CSIU. Like, that's really exciting. That's like my area of research. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I was sharing with my students about like, this is really cool. We're the only like regional place in the state that got this grant for training teachers. Like, so I don't know, I'm really excited. Jordan?
Just to the IU staff, thanks for having us this evening. Thanks for, I'm sure you could have probably thought of a couple other things you'd rather do with your time this evening, but thank you for hosting all of us. I really appreciate it.
Vince, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, thank you for the CSU staff for having us here. We appreciate it. Good to see you all again in a different environment here in the evening. Swimmers, fantastic. I think Kimberly, the medal count is way higher than that with some of the medals that she's won. I think it's around 9 over her career of being at Lewisburg. So great conversation, and I thank you to the parents for sharing your comments. So,
Heather?
I'd like to thank the IU as well. The takeaway from them as an organization is that they're always working to advance people, whether it's youth, K through 12 youth, or adults, teacher support. So it's a great institution. I'm also grateful for the parents and the really well-crafted letters they shared with us. It's very clear that this issue is very important to them. And so I'm grateful that they took the time to really delineate all of the issues that we need to think about. So I'm glad that they shared that. And I'd also like to thank Mrs. Beaver for her service.
Yes, I want to start out by thanking Giant. So as I mentioned before, January, February, March at our local Lewisburg Giant, you could round up, and the very generous Giant company was then, well, maybe not generous, but the very nice Giant company was then, because it wasn't their money, they were then holding that money for us and then donating it to the district. So that was very nice of them, and we received a check for $7,200 and some, I forget the, but around $7,200 that will go to help address food insecurity with our students within the district, which is a great number and amazing. And so thank you to Giant for doing that. Thank you as well to the CSIU. I know really, I don't know the CSIU really well, but I've worked with other IUs around Pennsylvania. And IUs do amazing things. I do know that for sure. And I do think, though, that when an IU is going to be used, we need to make sure that the parents and the students know what that's gonna look like for them. I too appreciate the parents that have shared things. Nobody's perfect, no institution is perfect, there's always room for improvement. And I do think we need to do a little bit of a mindset shift a little bit of not waiting to plan for students who might come, but knowing that these students are ours and are here and will be coming. I work in early childhood ed, they're coming, if we don't have them already, so we need to be prepared for that. And I think we need to start having more open conversations about that.
I just reiterate the thanks for the IU for hosting us tonight. It was a good experience to get to see the place, and I appreciate especially those of you that stuck to the end of the meeting, regardless of whether you had an option or not to do that, but we appreciate it. It made for a larger crowd than we typically get.
Thank you.
And Stephanie, good luck on your future endeavors.
Do you have anything you want to add? All right, I also want to congratulate the swimmers. Thank you for giving us a few more details there, Vince. That's, really some accomplishments. And I really want to thank the IU, particularly please thank the folks that, thank you all for being here, but for the extended questioning, I think that was really helpful. And as Mrs. Moser will provide, witness to, I have taken a lot of time over the last month to educate myself about special education, what we do in the district, not only what's required, but historically what we had. And I even asked her a question during the meeting just to remind myself about the programs that have evolved over time as the numbers of students in different categories of need and support have changed over time. And so I do think it's something that everyone on the board should know about. So I would really invite, thank you again to the parents who came and also those who have sent emails, but I hope that you'll be able to join us if you're available for the April 25th. It'll be earlier at least, we'll start at 7 with that, so not such a late night. But I really like Jamie's point. It's for the things that should rise to a multiple considerations of meetings, that's a good point to make. So let's keep that and be mindful about it. And so I think that's everything. I have a lot of notes here, but I didn't bullet them in numbers. So thank you to all of you. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved by Ms. Lyons.
Second.
Second by Ms. Stanton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.